In this lesson, we're going to learn how to add two integers. I'm going to start by showing you two different methods that you can use to help you visually see what the answer to an addition of integers problem would look like, and then we're going to go through the rules. We need to understand that when you're adding integers, there is a property called the additive inverse property. What this property tells you is the sum of a number and its inverse, or opposite, will always equal 0. So we know that if you add -5 plus 5, that will equal 0. That's a number and its opposite. If you're looking at an equation like this, x plus 7 equals 0, you know that to add 7 to a number to equal 0, that x would have to equal -7, because -7 plus 7 equals 0. We're going to use this idea in the first process I'm going to show you for adding integers. So let's look at these two examples right here. In the first one, I have -4 plus -6. Remember that when you add numbers, what you're doing is putting numbers together. So if I'm looking at -4 and -6, I'm essentially looking at this. What I have on the left of the addition sign is 4 individual negatives, and what I have on the right of the addition sign is 6 individual negatives. We're going to call these algebra tiles. Now again, addition is bringing those things together. So if I have -4 plus -6, and I actually bring them together, it looks like this. You can see what I have here is 10 negative tiles all together. There aren't any positives involved because the two numbers I was bringing together were both negative. So what you can say then is -4 plus -6 equals -10. If I have 4 negative tiles and 6 negative tiles and I bring them together, I'm going to have 10 negative tiles. Now that's going to look a little bit different on the other side, because what we have here is -4, but I have a +6. So on the left of the plus sign, I have my 4 negative tiles, and on the right of my plus sign, I have 6 positive tiles. Again, adding is bringing things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those tiles and I'm going to group them all as one thing. Now you know each of these tiles represents 1. So the 4 blues are 4 individual negative ones, and the 6 greens are 6 individual positive ones. We learned that the additive inverse property tells you that if you have a positive and a negative of the same number, they equal 0. So what happens when you bring these together then is, if you have this -1, it cancels out that positive one. This -1 cancels out that positive one. This -1 cancels out this positive one. And this -1 cancels out that positive one. So what I have left is 2 positives. So -4 plus +6 equals +2. Now you don't have to write the positive sign, but you see that it equals 2. Now I want you to kind of think about these numbers. In the first problem, we are doing a negative plus a negative. And again, you're just bringing those negatives together. There's nothing that cancels out. So when you add a negative and a negative, you're really just adding, and it keeps that same sign. When you have a negative and a positive, all those pairs are going to cancel out. So you're going to be left with either positives or negatives, depending on what you have more of. So in this example, -4 plus 6, you had more positives than you had negatives, so your answer turns out negative. I'm sorry, your answer turns out positive because you had 6 positives and 4 negatives. Therefore, the positives went out. You had more of them. Another way we can solve these is by using a number line. we know that on a number line, positive numbers go to the right and negative numbers go to the left. So if I'm looking at -4 plus -6, and notice I put parentheses around the -6 this time. Last time I didn't do that. You can do that. You don't have to do that. You just have to make sure you can see the difference between the plus and the negative. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw in my lines on my number line. And I'm going to use this number line to prove again that -4 plus -6 is -10. All right, so I notice that they're both negatives. So I'm going to put the 0 over here. And starting at 0, I'm going to go the -4 that it first says. So I'm going to jump from 0 to -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're at -4. And then from there, we're adding another -6. Since we're adding another negative, that means I have to go again to the left 6 more because negatives go to the left. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. And that takes me to -10, just like we found in the last one. So -4 plus, sorry about that, the announcements got me. -4 plus -6 using the number line then ends at -10 because it was jumping left and jumping left. If we look at -4 and +6, this time I'm actually going to put my 0 in the middle because I notice that I have a number going both directions. If I put the 0 in the middle, and again, I start at -4 because 0 goes to -4. Okay, so we're at -4, and the next number is +6, and I know that +6 has to jump forward to the right 6 spaces. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I end up right here, which is at +2. So I started to the left, and this time I went positive to the right, and I end up at -2, which is the same answer that we got. Oh, I'm sorry, +2, which is the same answer that we got in the first way. So both of these ways of showing adding integers is just to kind of give you a visualization to help you. If you need it to help solve them, you can. But when your numbers get really big, it's difficult to draw algebra tiles or use a number line. But it is a good idea to think what we were talking about with the algebra tiles. If I have -4 and +6, I know that I have more positives than negatives. So a lot of things are going to get canceled out, and it's going to end up being a positive. If you had more negatives than positives, it's going to end up being a negative. What we want to do is get the rules down for adding integers so we can think about things as we go. Okay, so if you think about the two examples that we had, there are two different types of problems that we have to remember for adding integers. The first example, the two numbers had the same sign, and in the second example, the two numbers had different signs. Let's talk about what you do when they have the same sign first. So we did -4 and -6, and what we noticed when we brought those algebra tiles together is that nothing canceled out. So when you have the same sign, all you really have to do, either positive or negative, is add the two numbers and keep the same sign. Because if you think about it, if you bring a whole bunch of negatives together, it's going to stay negative. And if you bring a whole bunch of positives together, it's going to stay positive. So a good example would be if I have -7 plus -20, picturing it, 7 negatives and 20 negatives. If you bring them together, you have 27 negatives. Same things happens with positives. If I have 4 plus 15, if I have 4 positive tiles and 15 positive tiles and bring them together, I have 19 positive tiles. It doesn't change. Even with the number line, -7 and -20 will take you left 7 and left 20. You'll be at -27. 4 plus 15, you go right 4 and right 15. You'll be at positive 19. The other type is when the signs are different. So let's look back real quick at this first example, -4 plus 6. -4 plus 6 turned out to be positive 2. If you think about the relationship between 4 and 6, what do you do to 4 and 6 to get 2? And you notice that you can subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. There were more positives than negatives, so it turned out to be positive 2. So when we're looking at different signs, we're not actually adding. You subtract and give the sign of the bigger absolute value. So what do I mean by that? The bigger absolute value. Let's take a look at this example. If I have -8 plus 3, those signs are different. So you do subtract, which is 5. But when you think about, do I have more negatives or more positives? I have 8 negatives and 3 positives. So that means if I cancel them out, I'm going to have more negatives left over. So the answer is -5. If I think about the absolute values of -8 and 3, the absolute value of -8 is 8. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So 8 is bigger. So 8 was your negative number. So your answer is negative. Now that's like the mathematical way to do it or to say it. Oftentimes we end up just saying subtract and give the sign of the bigger number, or subtract and give the sign of the number that you have more of. Do you have more positives or more negatives? And that's the solution. So let's squeeze another example in right here. If I give you 15 plus -12, the signs are different, so you end up subtracting. 15 minus 12 is 3. And in this one, you have more positives than you have negatives, so the answer is positive 3. So we want you to try the sheet that has just adding integers on it before you watch the next video. All right? Good luck.